Hari Om. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Bhadram Karne Vishranuyama Deva Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryajatra Sthirairangaistushtovagam Sastanobhi Vyashema Deva Hitam Yadayuhu Swasti na Indro Vruddhashrava Swasti na Posha Vishvaveda Swasti nastarksho Arishtanemihi Swasti no Bruhaspatirdadhatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste friends. Team Param Vedanta welcomes you all to the second and final special session on Advaita Prakarana. In the last session, we completed introduction to first 30 karikas of Advaita Prakarana. Today, in the second and final session of Dr. Hegde sir, will take us through the remaining 18 karikas and prepare us for the retreat scheduled for Sunday, 11th August 2024. With this background, I request Dr. Hegde sir to introduce us to the third chapter, the remaining karikas of the third chapter. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Venkatesh. Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Narayanam Padmabhuvam Vasishtam Shaktim Cha Tatputra Parascharam Cha Vyasam Sukam Gaudapadam Mahantam. I begin by a great prostration to the great Gaudapadacharya, the champion of Advaitha Vedanta. Swami Sarvapriyananda considers him as a hardcore Advaitin who is absolutely unrelenting. He is far more intense on Advaita compared to Sri Shankaracharya. Many Swamijis consider Shankaracharya as much a mellowed down version of Advaita compared to Gaudapadacharya. I also offer my prostration to Sri Ved Chaitanya, a great teacher of Mandukya Karika based on Shankara Bhashyam. The Advaita Prakaranam that we are studying, and we have a great opportunity to study this under many acharyas. Swami Paramarthananda has given us a wonderful background, a commentary on the Moolam as well as on the Bhashyam. This weekend, we will be having Sri Shankara Bharati Swamiji speaking to us, giving an overview of this. And that is how this class is a preparation for. 3 months from now, when we complete this Advaita Prakaranam of 48 karikas, we will have an opportunity to listen to this once again by Swami Anubhavanandaji. Now, these 48 karikas will be studied by all of us, and we will have an opportunity to study them at the rate of 5 per week in the next 3 months or so. In the last class, we saw the introduction, which was, I described it as biting a chili, because he is very non-compromising on upasana for those upasakas who think upasana is the goal. For those who think that upasana is a means to Advaita Jnanam, he perfectly is okay with them. In the last class, we studied the main topic of Advaita Prakarana. And this is a unique title which comes only in the Advaita Prakaranam called Ajati Vada. Ajati Vada means there is no real creation. And this is covered from Karika 3 to Karika 30, almost 28 Karikas deal with that. Today, the main discussion, I'm going to focus only 9 Karikas on Atma Jnanam. Almost all our classes are on one theme only. Our every weekly classes are here to gain Atma Jnanam. And in this Prakarana, that is why Swami Paramarthananda ji says that the Advaita Prakaranam is the most important chapter of the entire Advaita uh, uh, Mandukya Upanishad with Karikas. You know, there are 4 chapters of them. The third chapter, Swamiji considers the most important. And among them, the Karikas 31 to 39, where I'm going to focus on today, are particularly important. After 39, the Prakaranam, the Advaita Prakaranam, will focus on Nidityasanam or Vedantic meditation. For the next 5 minutes, I will briefly touch on what we studied in the last class. So the opening karika is like this: Upasana Shrito Dharma Jate Brahmani Vartate. By Jate Brahmani, that means that Brahman that is born, which means the Saguna Brahma, that which we worship in our prayer rooms and in the temples, which he says is an inferior form compared to the Nirguna Brahma. But those who don't go beyond, Tenasau Kripana Smritaha, he calls such person as miserly persons. We have to go beyond this miserliness, and that is the opening verse of this Prakaranam. In the second Prakaranam, he makes a promise, he makes a commitment. And in today's class, we will see whether Gaudapadacharya will keep up to this commitment. And what is the commitment? He says, Atho Vakshami, thereafter. That means, after the giving that introduction, I am going to explain, I am going to teach to you about what Akarpanyam, about that entity which is beyond all form of miserliness, which is beyond all forms of limitations. That means that Nirguna Brahma, Ajati Samatam Gatam, Ajati, that which is not born, or from which nothing is born. Samatam, Samatam means that which is uniform, which has attained to, or which is in the state of uniformity, which has no diversity. There is no differences in it. Yata na jayate kinchit, from which nothing is born. Jayamana samantataha, even though from all sides you will see so many things being born, he says from that entity which I am going to teach you, that akarpanyam, which is going to tell you about that Nirguna Brahma, that is his promise, that is his commitment. I am going to teach you about that. So be alert to what is that. I touched about this in the last class also. When we use the word Advaita, we mean in spite of experiences of multiplicity, in spite of seeing differences, can I come to a state where I do not differentiate? For example, we cannot separate the singer from the song. We cannot separate the dancer from the dance. And very important, and this is what is Vishwarupa Ishvara Darshan. For those of us who have been through this Bhagavad Gita training, it becomes relatively easy. As you see anything and everything in the creation, can you train your eyes to be able to see the Creator? Ultimately, what is true Advaita? I see differences. My mind and the sense organs, by nature, my mind dissects. My mind makes a separation. Even though my mind makes separation, my trained intellect, that means that part of the mind that has been trained to see Advaita in spite of Dvaita, will not differentiate even though I experience differences. In our own example, we see sometimes our own tongue is bitten by our own teeth. There is something in me which is hurt and something in me which is hurting. Even though my tongue has been bitten by my teeth, I'm not going to punish my teeth. Why? Because although there are experiences of differences, I don't differentiate because both are none other than me. Now we need to see this extension as we go beyond. Now there is a beautiful prayer. I will begin with one prayer and I will conclude with one prayer. This is a nice prayer from Rabindranath Tagore. Many years ago, when my first teacher of spiritual education, Father Ronnie Prabhu, was with us for a long time and he got transferred. And when he was leaving, he left this prayer with us. And he said that this is my prayer because now I'm leaving all of you and I feel uncomfortable about the fact that I'm leaving. And this particular prayer, when I'm leaving all of you and going to a new place, has been my support. Let us listen to this prayer. Thou hast made me known to friends whom I knew not. Thou hast given me seats in homes, not my own. Thou hast brought the distant near and made a brother of the stranger. I feel uneasy at heart when I have to leave my accustomed shelter. I forget there abides the old in the new, and there also thou abidest. I should have highlighted this. I forget. That means a student of Vedanta always remembers that there abides the old in the new, and there also, through Vishwarupa Ishvara Darshana training, I'm able to see you in and through in any strange place wherever I go. Now, sometime a time may come and I have to leave this body. So this is a very relevant prayer even at that time. Not only when you have to leave a particular place, when you have to leave this body also. Through birth and death, in this world or in others, wherever thou leadest me, it is thou the same, the one companion of my endless life, whoever linketh my heart with bonds of joy to the unfamiliar. And then he concludes, and this is a very nice Advaitic concept, when one knows thee. We can translate this as Advaita Brahman. When one knows that one, that means to see the whole world as an extension of myself. When one knows thee, then alien there is none, no door is shut. Oh, grant me my prayer that I may never lose the bliss of the touch of the one in the play of the many. In the last class, we touched upon the main karikas from 3 to 30. And the topic there was Ajati Vada, or the theory or the hypothesis that Gaudapadacharya wants to prove both by logic and by scriptural authority that no jiva is born, no jagat is born. He says through logic or through scriptural proofs. That means through Shruti and Yukti. He gives you a convincing proof that there is no birth of the jiva, there is no birth of the jagat. And how does he do that? By giving the example, a wonderful example of the pot example. The pot is only the upadi or the border, but he compares all of us to the pot space and sees how you are not separate from the total space. And therefore, there is no birth, there is no death, there is no differentiation. And then I experience a creation outside. How do you explain that? He says you experience a dream world, which is also an illusion. This is also an illusion. That is how he says logically and scripturally. What is the scriptural proof for that no jiva is really born is about Mahavakyas. All the Mahavakyas in the Upanishads will link our true nature with that of Ishvara. That means Jivatma and Paramatma are not different at all. Then you have so many scriptural quotations which say like Neha Nanasti Kinchana. Really, there is nothing that has really been born. With that, we have completed the first 30 karikas. I will touch on the importance of that beautiful example of Ghatakasha and Mahakasha and ask this question. Now, does the pot have to be broken for me to be free? Or do I have to have that understanding that there is no real limitations caused by the pot? Because space is such that in fact, the pot is not the space is not within the pot. In fact, the pot is within the space. And if you have that vision, then whether the pot wall is there or not, there is no limitations at all. This verse from the Bhagavad Gita, Na jayate mriyate va kadachin, nayam bhutva bhavita va nabhuyaha, ajaha, unborn, nityaha, am always there, sashvataha, Puranaha. I've been existing from the very beginning. Na hanyate hanyamane sharire becomes meaningful because the pot space is not born out of the total space. So therefore, there can be no destruction. There can be no pollution or no sadness afflicting the pot space, because really space is asangoham. And then sometimes there seems to be a distinction between me and you and all of us. But what distinction when you see yourself as space? There is no big space, there is no small space. Now, relationship between one another can be there only if there is a differences. But if there is one, what kind of sambandha can be there? And therefore, asangoham, no sense of relationships. In Karika 13, again, this was in the last class, Apurva Pakshi comes and says, now I have a problem with all your theories because you have been quoting scriptures and Mahavakyas to say Jivatma and Paramatma are one and the same, but I can quote any number of verses which come both from Veda Purva and from the Vedanta, which talk of various differences. For example, we have the two-bird example, the Jivatma and the Paramatma. So there are scriptures which talk of differences between Jivatma and Paramatma. How do you explain that? So Gaudapadacharya had to say that there is something called Adhikari Veda. That means all of us or most of us are not able to come to the Paramarthika. That is why Veda Purva helps us to come to Veda Anta through various upasana. And when there is a upasaka and upasya, that means I'm praying to the Lord, that process helps my mind to get chitta ekagrata, and therefore it is a spiritual practice. So it is only done as a certain preparatory practice for Jnana Yoga. That is why Veda Purva deals with all that. Then how do you explain Vedanta? In the Vedanta, every Upanishad has got a different theory of creation. How do you explain so many theories of creation? Again, he says, these theories are only stories. And if you understand what is Adhyaropa Apavada, in order to give the higher teaching, it requires that you have to have something. And that is why the creation is brought in the Upanishads, and why there are so many different stories. For example, there is a story, just to illustrate that among all the organs, the importance of prana. For example, there is a story which says the eyes and the ears and all the sense organs of action, the sensory organs decided to have a competition to say who's more important. The eye left for 1 year. There was difficulty, but the body would continue. So like that, different organs left. But the moment prana said that I am going to leave, the very thought that prana is going to leave, everybody surrendered to prana, trying to show the importance of prana. But if you see the prana story, you will see the prana story is different in different Upanishads. And again, our teacher will tell us, why the prana story is different, because these are only stories. These are what are called, they are not the Mukyartha, it is called the Gaunartha. This is only secondary, and later all of these are going to be Apavada. They're going to be negated. Now, when we are studying from 3 to 30, the Ajati Vada part, between 17 to 22, there is a clear diversion. And in this diversion, he hits on his whole theory that how Advaitam is more important and what all problems will happen to those who insist on Advaita. He is very gentle but yet firm and helps us to move from Dvaita to Advaita. He criticized those people who hold on to Dvaitam because they become fanatic. And then he gives very logical reasons to say that the immortal can never be mortal. That means you are already immortal. That means when you say asatoma mrityorma amritam gamaya, when you make that prayer, remember there is no mortality. It is only seeming mortality. Only in that way you can understand your true nature. I think with that, we completed the what we studied in the last class. As I said, I'm open for any points or discussion. Now, towards the end of that part, that means as we come to Karika 28, 29, 28, 29, 30. Now, towards the end of the whole theory of creation, there comes a very important logical dialogue. Now, in science, we have the law of conservation of matter and energy. And the law of conservation of matter and energy, it says nothing is really created, nothing can be destroyed. Matter or energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Now, if you really look logically at creation, you will realize one thing: nothing can really be created. Therefore, whenever you look logically into the theories of creation, you will have a problem that you will not be able to accept. That is why only in belief systems you can have theories of creation. So the question comes, the creation that we see in front of us, has it come out from an existent creation or is it from non-existent? For example, there are certain Buddhist schools which talk about shunya, and from nothingness, this whole world has come. Now, from nothing, neither real or unreal can come. For example, from a real rope, you can project a snake. But when there is nothing, out of nothing, how anything can come. But there are various schools of philosophies, which we will see in the Alate Shanti Prakarana, in the next Prakarana, where all these different theories from different philosophical schools are discussed. So our whole discussion now is, this creation, has it come from Sat or has it come from Asat? And from either Sat or Asat, is it a real creation or is it a Mithya creation? And logically, it comes to only one possibility, like the snake projecting on the rope. It should be from Sat, a Mithya projection is possible. And that is how logically we will conclude the whole creation aspect. I will come to today's topic. And in today's topic, we have few new terms. One term that I've already described is Ajati Vada. Now, as I said, Ajati Vada, these are all new terms in Advaita Prakarana. We have to know. The other term that we have to know is called Atma Satyanubodha. What is Atma Satyanubodha? Atma Satyanubodha is nothing other than Atma Jnana. It is Gaudapadacharya's term for Atma Jnanam. So, Brahma Satyam, to have that Nishta of Brahma Satyam. And how does this Brahma Satyam come? It is possible only through Guru Shastra Upadesha. Now, therefore, thanks to our Guru, thanks to our Shastras, we have an inkling of spiritual knowledge. This spiritual knowledge which comes through Guru and Shastra is called Anubodha. Now, the Adi Shankara has analyzed the word Anu and Bodha. Bodha means the spiritual wisdom that has come through Guru and Shastra. What is the meaning of Anu? Anu has got two meanings. One is daily, like for example, Anu Dina. There are certain practices that you're supposed to do every day. And he says it cannot be daily. It should be the other word, that is after. After what? After getting spiritual knowledge through the Guru and Shastra, in such a way you have gone through Shravanam, Mananam, Nidityasanam, and my favorite term, Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam. You have been able to grasp that. That is the meaning of this very powerful term, Atma Satyanubodha. There is another term which is again used only in this Advaita Prakarana, and that is what is called as Amani Bhava. What is the meaning of the word Amani Bhava? It comes from Man. Man means mind. When you're fast asleep, we have no problems. When we come into this waking world, all problems come into being. That means wherever the mind is functioning fully in the waking state, the mind is functioning partially in the dream state. Problems happen whenever there is the mind. And the treatment for samsara is Amani Bhava. Amani Bhava literally means mind mastery. That is why all our spiritual teachers train us to see how we can be the master of our mind. That is what is called Amani Bhava. Once you attain Amani Bhava, the other two terms, Mano Nigraha and Mano Nasha, are relative terms coming to Amani Bhava. Mano Nigraha is the process that we are working to be able to control our mind. And through Mano Nigraha, we come to Mano Nasha. Mano Nasha, I will explain as the class goes, is destruction of the problematic mind. It's like, for example, right now, all of us are using our mobile telephones. But if you want to pay full attention, what do? You keep the mobile in a silent mode so that its activity will go on. It will be getting messages for you, but it will not disturb you. But that is what is called Mano Nasha. I have complete mastery of the mind. And the climax of all that is Asparsha Yoga. Yoga means to join. Sparsha means to touch. Asparsha means no touch. I will use the word to become untouchable. How do you become untouchable? Joining to untouchability. What is this untouchability? That means you cannot be touched by anything that happens to your body, mind, or to the world outside. That means you have this understanding that anything anatma cannot touch me. Asparsha. I have joined to yoga means joined to that understanding that nothing can touch me. This is it. If you have understood these terms, you have got Advaita Prakaranam in essence. Now the rest will be a commentary on all this. Now I'm coming back to that term Ajati Vada. Ajati Vada means there is no real creation. We studied Vaitatya Prakaranam. This is actually a continuation that there is no real world, or whatever I see is only mithya. This is extremely difficult to accept. Why? I can experience this world, I can transact with the world. This world is very useful for me. How can you say it is not real? So I will just read. If the world is not born, how are we experiencing it? And the answer is, just as in the dream world, which is a product of Maya, which is an erroneous perception of something that is really not there, but can affect, so too this world is also a product of Maya. Now there is a very famous scriptural quote from the Purusha Suktam, which says, Ajayamano Bahuda Vijayate, which means the world is not really born. It seems that so much has come without nothing being really born. That is Ajati Vada. We come to Karika number 29. So, as I said, we are concluding the Srishti chapter and we're coming. This is Karika number 29. Karika 29, for the first time, speaks very strongly about what we know as Drishti Srishti Vada. Now, in dream, I project a dream world, I sustain a dream world, and the dream world resolves into me. Now, whenever we are studying Mandukya and the Mandukya Karikas, we are trained to have this view of Drishti Srishti. This Drishti Srishti Vada, Swami Paramarthananda ji has spoken extensively in another talk during the talk of Vichara Sagara. While he's talking on Mandukya, particularly Mandukya with Shankara Bhashyam, he does not bring in Drishti Srishti Vada because this is a post-Shankara theory. While during Shankara's period, Adi Shankara himself did not bring it very strongly. Now, in the post-Shankara era, there were certain fallacies in our own understanding of Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya, and therefore the Purva Pakshis brought out, were heavily against it. And the post-Shankara Acharyas brought out this Drishti Srishti Vada to support our understanding. Now, let me go through this Karika very briefly. Yata swapne dvaya bhasham spandate mayaya manaha, just like during the dream, through Maya and the mind, a dream world is projected. So too, during the waking time, the mind through Maya projects a world. This is what is called Drishti Srishti Vada. So there is duality in both these conditions. In the waking state and in the dream state, we see duality. In dream state, the mind perceives duality because of Maya Shakti or Nidra Shakti. We know that. So too, exactly like that, in Jagrat Avastha also, the mind perceives a seeming duality because of Maya Shakti. This is a nice example to see. The white light here represents Parabrahma, Paramatma. The mind represents Maya and my mind. Because of Maya and the mind, the one now becomes many. And that is why when we wake up or in dream, the one, this is what is called the Turiya. That one Turiya has now become many. These words talk about the same thing. The non-dual appears as many in dream and waking. Remember this karikas are very poetic. Advayam cha dvayam bhasham. Abhasham. Advayam. The turiyam, when it goes through manaha swapne na samshaya. About this, there is no doubt. And he says, even during jagrat, tata jagrat na samshaya. He says, just the same way, when the non-dual goes through this body-mind, there is a projection of multiplicity. What is the meaning for all of us? Even though I see multiple, I can take it as two things. Whatever I see, now in Vaittatya Prakaranam, I've been told that whatever I see and experience is not real, and to take it as mithya. Here we are taking to see whatever I see and experience, take that to be Brahman. We have so many similar verses. That is why every time before we have food, we say Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavi, Brahmagno, Brahmanahutam, Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhinaha, which means whatever I see and experience is none other than Brahman. The next karika. So what is the karika number 31? Now, I'll just read this karika, which says, Mano Drishyam Idam Dvaitam Yat Kinchit Sacharacharam. That means everything that I see that which moves or not is not moving is the product of our mind only. That means in deep sleep, we don't see duality. It is only when the mind is awake, we see duality. Then he say, Manaso hi Amani Bhava. If you are able to come to that state of no mind, Amani Bhava, Dvaitam Naivopalabhyate. That means you will not experience duality. That means in spite of duality, in spite of experience of duality, just like I see the sun setting or the sun rising, but I know the sun does not set or the sun does not rise. I'm holding a pot in my hand and I say there is no such thing called pot or only clay. This is a Vedantic transformation of whatever we have seen. So Gaudapadacharya's argument is this. In Karika 31, he says, what is the cause of samsara? The Upanishads declare Dvitiya Advai Bhayam Bhavati. Whenever I have an experience of duality, there is samsara. In deep sleep, I do not have that. So what do? The mind is the cause of all my problems. Mana eva manushyanam karana bandha mokshaye. So the whole treatment will become mind management, to be able to treat my own mind. Now, one method is through bhakti. Through bhakti, we have to learn to be able to dissolve our mind with the Lord. And the more we have the sense of Ekarupa, Anekarupa, and Arupa, just like the salt doll example. Now, whenever we have to dissolve our mind, the mind is useful, but the mind is the cause of all our problems. And through all forms of spiritual training, all great masters like Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and Bhagwan Sri Ramana give this example of how the salt doll is able to dissolve into the sea. And the only way to know the infinite is to become one with the infinite. Many spiritual teachers refer to the greatness of Bhagwan Ramana although he did not go through formal spiritual training, how much his understanding was in line with exactly what Gaudapadacharya. In fact, after all these things were introduced to him, one of his very favorite topics was Mandukya and the Mandukya Karika. Shri Bhagwan Ramana loved Mandukya, and he would always refer to it, and he seemed to be an ardent proponent of the Srishti Vada. Now, see these words, Laya Vinashane Ubaya Rodani. Ubaya, both these Rodane are the methods of controlling the mind. One is called Laya and the other is called Vinasha. Laya means is to temporarily control the mind, for example, in deep sleep, or through drugs, or through alcohol, or through anesthesia. So through so many methods, we can temporarily hold the mind through pranayam, through some forms of samadhi experiences. You can go into laya, but when you come out of that meditation, you come back to the same mind. On the other hand, through spiritual understanding, you come to manonasha. And what is manonasha? He explains in the next line, laya gatam puna. When the laya state is over, the mind comes back. Bhavati nomritam. On the other hand, when the mind goes into vinasha, you see duality, but you do not experience duality. So, Nashtamanasa Utkrishta Yogina. So he said the greatest yogi is the one who has mastered his mind. And such a person is Krita Kritasya. For him, there is nothing to do, there is nowhere to go. So having given this introduction, in the 32nd Karika, he comes to one of his famous teachings, Atma Satyanu. So what is the answer to the whole problem of samsara? Atma Satyanu. That means through spiritual awakening, when you come to the spiritual understanding of Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya, not just theoretically, it is an understanding. Na sankalpayate. The mind does not make any form of projection. It comes to amanastam. See the word amani. That state of amanastam. The mind has come to that state of no mind. Tada, yada, tada. That means when the mind is in the state of amanastam, there is no more projection. Why? There is nothing to interact, there is nothing to grab, and there is no seer seen. For example, in the waking and dream state, there is Vishwa and Virat, Taijasa, Hiranyagarbha, Prajna, Ishvara. The experiencer and the experienced duality is not there, and that's when you come to the state of Turiya, Nantat Prajnam, Na Beshish Prajnam. This is an important Karika, Karika number 32. And in the next Karika, and those who know Sanskrit and those who have spiritual understanding, the moment they read this Karika, akalpakam, ajam jnanam, neyam abhinna prakakshate, brahma adena ajam nityam, ajena ajam viputyate. This is a little difficult construction, but then this Karika talks about the greatness of Atma Jnanam. And what is the greatness of Atma Jnanam? Akalpakam, ajam. Now, there is that neya abhinna. That means jnanam, neyam, jnana gamyam. You know, the uniqueness of Atma Jnanam is that there is no triputi. What is this triputi? I am the experiencer. There is an object of experience, and I use my mind for experience. There is a triputi in all worldly transactions. But in Atma Jnanam, in the last Karika, when you spoke about Atma Anubodha, Atma Satyanubodha, and that comes from Amanastam. That means no mind. The question that is asked is, when there is a state of no mind, when I have no mind, how do I know Brahman? How do I get Brahma Jnanam? And the answer is, to know Brahman, you don't need the mind, because the mind is actually a block. For example, when the cloud is blocking the sun and the wind, which is in the form of Guru and Shastra, takes away the wind, the sun shines by itself. So this Veda of the knower and known disappears, and this is the uniqueness of Brahma Jnana. That means I don't need to know Atma as an object, because Atma is revealed as I am, which is self-evident. Remember when we studied Tripti Deepa, this came as Vritti Vyapti and Pala Vyapti. That means when you attain to a state of mind, that state of mind when there is no mind, Atma reveals by itself. So many teachers says, you don't have to take a lamp to see a lamp. So a lamp is self-revealing. So what is the role of Guru and Shastras if Atmas are self-revealing? To remove this obstacle, to help you to come to that state of no mind. And that is the role of Guru and Shastras. In the Bhagavad Gita, you have this verse in the 13th chapter, Jnanam Neyam Jnanagamyam. In the Kaivalya Upanishad, you will remember, Trishu Damasu Yad Bhogyam Bhokta Bhogyascha Yad Bhaved Pebyo Vilakshana Sakshi Chinmatroham Sadashiva. I will tell you this story of the Princess of Kashi and take a little break after the story, because this is a story, again, shared first that I heard from Swami Sarva Priyananda. There was a story of in the palace, the queen on a certain occasion wanted to have a certain drama for all the people in the palace. And for that, they required a 5-year-old girl to play a role as the Princess of Kashi. And as they did not find any suitable girl, her own son, who was the prince and was aged around 5 years, was dressed up like a girl. And when the boy dressed up like the girl, he looked so beautiful that the mother was fascinated to see her own son like a girl. So she requested a painter to come and make a portrait of her own son, who was now dressed up like a girl. And there was this beautiful picture. Many years later, this picture was stacked somewhere in the attic. Now, 15 years had passed. That same 5-year-old boy now became 20-year-old. And as he was going through his palace, he came across a picture of a beautiful young girl. And the title was Princess of Kashi. And the date was some 15 years ago. And he calculated that this girl would now be about 20 years of my age. And seeing that picture, he was so fascinated. And he made up his mind that if ever he would get married, it would be this girl. Now, when a person is love-lorn, you could see there is something wrong. The parents could see there was something wrong in the prince, but the boy was not communicating anything. So they asked a particular minister to find out what is the matter. And the boy said that I'm in love with a particular girl. She is a princess, and I would like to marry her. And then he said, very good, but where is she? No, I have only seen a painting and I want your help to find out where she is. Then he goes and shows that painting. Now, the minister clearly understood. He sat and explained to that boy the whole story. This is what is called the Prakarana, and how the teacher gives the whole background and finally tells that, who this girl is. It is none other than you, Tattvamasi. Ultimately, the one that you are really looking for and searching is none other than yourself. And this is what is Atma Satyanu Bodhena. Now, the moment he discovered that it is none other than himself, that feeling of wanting, or that feeling, whenever there is no difference, there is no sense, there is no Veda, when there is no Dvaita, then the whole samsara is gone. I'm open for a few minutes of discussion, if there is anything. And then there are a few more karikas which I'd like to continue. I can take a few questions. Anybody, please.
In Mandukya Karika, it talks about no creation, like Ajati Vada. So, but in other Upanishads, for example, like I studied Mundaka Upanishad, it talks about creation. I don't remember the verse exactly, but it
Very,
says
very
that this
true. Very
from
true,
this.
Dala. Many
Yeah.
Upanishads, for example, Kaivalya Upanishad, Mundaka Upanishad, all give various theories of creation. But
Isn't it contradictory then?
it is contradictory or seemingly contradictory. These are called gauna. Gauna means secondary. Now, initially I told you, I gave a long talk. I said this is what is called Adhyaropa Apavada. It is like if you want to drink water, you need to give it in a container, no? So therefore, all these theories of creation are given as a container for you to be able to understand. And once that understanding is set in, then you have to do Apavada. You will have to negate it. Okay, Dola?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hariom, sir.
Kulkarni sir, please go ahead.
Sir, is it that the Upadi is the main cause for the creation?
That's true. Creation is all based on Upadi, which by itself is Mithya. And the real, we have to shift from Mithya to Satya to move from the pot wall to the pot space. See, the whole movement is from the pot wall to the pot space. And if I see myself as pot space, then I have been there from, then the meaning na jayate mriyate va becomes meaningful. That is why this is a very beautiful verse for us to meditate on. When you wake up and you sit in your prayer room, spend some time on na jayate mriyate. There is no birth for me. There is no death for me. I cannot be affected by any of the elements because I am asangoham, asangoham. Few more karikas, I will continue. Now, karika number 34. Now, we have spoken about Mano Nasha, Amani Bhava. Now, there are three similarities. A jnani is in a state of no mind. A sleeper is in a state of no mind. A yogi also is in a state of no mind. The word he uses is nigrahatasya manaha nirvikalpasya dhimata. Now, you have to make a distinction. You have to know the difference because Shushupti is in the state of ignorance, whereas a jnani is in a state of knowledge. Now, there are certain states like Manolaya and Manonasha. They come and they go. I will touch on another very beautiful karika. One day we will be studying these in detail. You will enjoy these karika. For example, karika 36, Ajam, no birth. Birth happens to what? The body. That means I'm negating, I'm not this body. Anidram, no sleep. Sleep is referring to the Karana Sharira. I'm not the causal body. Aswapnam, I am not the subtle body. That means na jayate, nantat pragnam na bahish pragnam na ubayata pragnam na prajnanagam. Now, then the other is anamakam. The real me has no name. Arupam, I do not have form. Sakrit vibhatam, of the nature of consciousness. Sarvagnyam. Now, the moment the word sarvagnyam is a description of, remember, Gaudapadacharya is helping us to come to that akarpanyam, that Brahman. Now, he's giving all these are the descriptions of that Brahman. Now, the word Sarvagnyam, the moment the word Sarvagnyam comes, this is referred to Ishvara, the all-knower. And Adi Shankara in his commentary will have a problem in talking about Sarvagnya because Brahman is not Sarvagnya. So he uses his excellence in Sanskrit to break it to Sarva and Jnanam. Brahman is of the nature of something that is universal, that universal consciousness. No pachara katachana. He says for such a person there is avyavaharam. That Brahman does not have any form of transactions whatsoever. The word samadhi comes. Samadhi has been described in this. Samadhi has got many meanings, or at least two meanings. That which is the substrate on which everything is resting or resting properly, or a state of mind where the mind is in a state of full absorption. Adi Shankara gives two meanings to the state of samadhi. And because yoga talks of nirvikalpaka samadhi, wherein a person comes to a state of no mind or manonasha. The ultimate training or Amani Bhava means, can my mind be like a mirror? In fact, when you go to the schools of Sufi schools or to the schools of Zen or all Buddhist schools, ultimately talk of how our mind should become like a mirror. That means the mind should not contaminate anything. It should be able to reflect everything, because now there is no such thing called the mind. The mind has melted into Atma. And this is a very important karika, the karika number 38, because here, remember, in karika number 2, he said, Ato Vakshami, I'm going to teach you about that Akarpanyam Brahma, which is Ajati Samatam Gatam. So he says, I'm concluding this teaching by telling you about that which does not take anything, which does not give anything, Atma Samstam, in that in which everything is properly established in the form of Samadhi, Ajati Samatam Gatam. So the same initial description of Brahman, he finally concludes in Karika 38. With Karika 38, he says the teaching is almost over. He says how the mind should be a mirror. Swami Chinmayananda gives this expression. He says a mirror accepts everything, it rejects nothing, it reflects everything, keeps nothing for itself. Can you be like a mirror? Now, I gave an example earlier on about how when the white light goes through the prism, there is a whole experience of multiplicity. But then if you're able to train and put that white light, that incidental light in such an angle, it is perpendicular to the prism. There is a beautiful physics principle called total internal reflection. Now, the prism of my mind, which was making that Atma Tattva into multiplicity, now the mind now becomes a mirror. And through possible training, my mind is able to reflect. That means whatever I see is Atma only, Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavi, Brahmagno. And then in this Karika 38, Adi Shankara goes to one verse from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where we have the famous Yajnavalkya telling Gargi. He says, if a person leaves this body before getting this knowledge, such a person is a kripanaha. That is why we have this beautiful word which comes in so many Upanishads, including Kaivalya Upanishad, Vedanta Vijnana Sunishtitartha. Sannyasa Yoga Yata Shuddha Sattvam Te Brahma Loke Paranta Kale Parimuchyante Sarvi. Now, once you have Vedantic wisdom, you don't have an ordinary death. You have Paranta Kale, but there is no coming back. And that is our whole work to move from Jnanam to Jnana Nishta. However, he says this Asparsha Yoga is difficult to attain. He says for those people who do not have Drishti Srishti Vada. That means for those who have Drishti Srishti Vada, it becomes very easy. But for those who do not have, who have Srishti Drishti Vada, it is difficult. Even though it is difficult, he says it is possible. He says it is possible. And how is it possible? Through the process of Nidityasanam. And that is how this whole chapter will conclude. I will conclude with a very beautiful prayer from Shri Dakshinamurti Stotra. And that is Karika number. This beautiful prayer, which is Asparsha Yoga. I've already defined what is this Asparsha Yoga, where I'm not going to be affected by anybody because I have no sense of duality. It is possible to attain. Even although it is difficult, it is possible. My final and concluding prayer will be from Shri Dakshinamurti Stotra, which goes like this. Vishwam Pashyati Karya Karanataya. That means in Swapna and Jagrata, I see Swapna world or the Jagrat world as Karya Karanam, cause and effect. Because I did Punya or Papa, I'm experiencing whatever. Saswami Sambandhata, possessor and possessed. I can be possessed by my possessions. Shishya Acharya Tata Pitra Putra. These forms of relationships which always affect us, Where does it affect us? In Swapne and Jagrata. That same Yesha Purusha Maya Paribramita. It is completely deluded. That is why I pray to Shri Dakshina Murti to help me to overcome all this. Now we come to the last topic, and the topic is about Nidityasanam or meditation. And he says through meditation, and he gives a very powerful example. And the powerful example he gives is, if you take the kusha grass, that means from the tip of the kusha grass, and you with each tip of the kusha grass, you can take one drop of the ocean. Now he says, now if a sadhaka is so committed, that means he wants to make the ocean dry by taking the tip of the kusha grass and makes that attempt to dry the ocean one drop at a time. He says, have that kind of commitment. That means there is nothing impossible for such a person. When you have that kind of commitment, you will get various forms of support from higher forces that which will make it possible. In the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna told Shri Krishna, it is so difficult, what does Shri Krishna says? Abhyasena tu kauntena vairagena cha grihyate. Through abhyasa and through vairagya, you will be able to attain. Finally, there are some 4 obstacles. What are those 4 obstacles? The last few karikas talk about what is this laya, vikshepa, kashaya, and rasasvada. Laya means drowsiness because of predominant tamas. Vikshepaha is the restless mind because of rajas. Now, if you overcome this, it is possible that a certain person comes to a state of kashaya. A person comes to a stagnation. Sometimes even a spiritual seeker comes to a state when you feel no progress at all. The mind comes to a state of stunned. And then finally, there is another obstacle called rasa aswada, when you develop a certain form of addiction to meditation. All these I have described in an earlier class where all these have been, and I have spoken about how to avoid them. This is the last karika, very, very powerfully says here, na kaschid jayate jiva. No jiva is ever born because there is no cause, there is no effect. Etad tad uttamam satyam. This is the highest truth. Yatra kinchan na jayate. There nothing ever is born. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Shri Venkatesh Prasad, please conclude, and you can use the same Shanti Pata once again.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Hegde, sir, for a wonderful introduction to Advaita Prakaranam. It was so crystal clear explanation of some of the very difficult karikas and the chapter in general. Thank you, friends, for your indulgence in this journey of Mandukya Upanishad. With this comprehensive introduction, we are now ready to attend the retreat tomorrow. Let's conclude today's session with the Shanti Mantra. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I'm continuing the recording for another few minutes. If there is any specific question to clarify, so that our understanding of Advaita Prakaranam, to what, I have gone very quickly, but this is what is the great Advaita Prakaranam.
How to reach to that stage of no mind?
Through Shravanam, through Mananam, and even before that, through Karma Yoga, through Upasana Yoga. See, whenever we do Karma Yoga, that means Karma Yoga is our basic sadhana. What does Karma Yoga do? Our mind has got various forms of raga, dvesha, kama, krodha, various forms of impurities. And to be able to work on our mind, the only treatment initially is for few years of karma yoga. After some time, if the mind has to be more refined to have greater control of my mind, the teacher gives various forms of meditations like manasa parayanam, manasa puja, manasa japa. That means the teacher will give you a mantra. Shri Rama, Jaya Rama, Jaya Jaya Ram. You know all this. But this is done as a technique for me to be able to refine our mind. See, all of us have bypassed many of these and straight away come. So when you go to an ashrama or when you go to a gurukula, these are everyday, very intense practices. Through karma yoga and through upasana yoga, we have a certain amount of what we call sadhana chatustaya sampanna. Viveka, Vairagya, Samadhi, Shakti, Sampatti, and Mokshutva. In that state, the teacher slowly gives us this teaching. He gives us Shravanam, Mananam. That is what the teacher can do. He can clarify all the doubts. Thereafter, we have to reflect on this teaching. So the teaching is given, we reflect on the teaching. And then I said, even for that, there are various blocks. There is Laya, Vikshepa, Rasa, Swada, Kashaya, and so on, Dola.
So you said the prism, at one point when the prism becomes like a mirror and the light comes out as a light, that's how we have to make our mind is right now like a prism and shows the world of many. And now then we have to make it like a clean mirror where we can see the world as the self. So there is actually an angle at which the light reflects as light. So?
In physics, yes, that light, it has to be perpendicular to the prism. Once it is, that means there is no angle at all. So the angle of incidence should be zero. It should be in such a way. This is what is called total internal reflection. So the prism, which was normally causing a refraction, now becomes a reflecting surface. It happens in water, in other medium also. In a certain angle, if you put into water, it reflect it instead of refracting, it will reflect. Now, let me tell you one story. Now, this is a story from the Sufi period. There was a great Sufi teacher called Junaid. Now, he had many students, and one of his students was Sibli. Sibli was on the verge of enlightenment, and later when he became enlightened, he gave him the various stories in his life where he was hit by various circumstances, and he says the final hit was given to him by his own guru that helped him to attain to the mind becoming a mirror. So when, there are stages when the ego is dormant, the ego surfaces. One day, Junaid was in his house, and Sibli keeps coming to his house. And as he was entering the house, Junaid was told his wife, whenever a man enters the house, a woman covers herself. So very naturally, Junaid's wife puts a veil on her face the moment Sibli comes. Sibli had not yet entered the house, but Junaid, because he was on the verge of enlightenment, he told, "Oh, Sibli has come. There's no need for you to cover yourself." Now, Sibli heard it. And the moment he heard that, it was an acknowledgement for him through his own understanding that my master has considered me as enlightened. Now, supposing in a room, if a breeze blows, a breeze is like nobody. And when a nobody enters a house, a woman does not have to cover herself. So Sibli's coming in was like a breeze, like nobody has come. Now, the moment Sibli heard his master had declared him like enlightened, he became so emotional, he broke down into tears. Suddenly, the great teacher Junaid tells his wife, "Oh, Sibli has come, now you can cover yourself." Because there was a subtle ego in Sibli that my master has considered me as enlightened. Now, He said, that words of my teacher broke the last part of my ego. So if you are lucky to have a teacher during those stages, like, I always tell the story of the word gate, gate, parasam, gate, bodhisvaha. Now, a student goes through various levels of understanding. This mantra came when Sariputra was on the verge of enlightenment and not yet enlightened. And that is how the teacher helps them. Come on, move further. Gate, gate. You have gone from that level to another level. The teacher gently pushes you, just like Tapovan Maharaj helped Sri Ramakrishna Paramhamsa to move from the staunch Advaita that he was, that Upasaka that he was, to being the great Advaitin, the Paramhamsa. Mind becoming a mirror. Nita.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
If there are no more questions, I will stop the recording and we can
Sir,
have.
if you could say the story of the Gate Gate, please, again.
All right. There
Thank
is
you, sir.
one scriptural text in the Buddhist parlance. There is one scriptural text in the Buddhist parlance called the Hridayam Sutra. The Hridayam Sutra, this is a very profound work, and my reading has been through Osho. It is in an English book called the Heart Sutra. Osho calls this the discussion between Sariputra and Gautama Buddha as one of the very refined texts, because Sariputra is not opened a single word. Gautama Buddha is perceiving what is in Sariputra's mind, and the whole discussion goes on about how to move from one level to another. And then finally, he gives this mantra. And he says, before he gives this mantra, he says, this is the greatest mantra, the mantra of mantras. There can be no greater mantra. And he says, gate. The word gate means gone. Gate, gate. Gone from one level to another level. Now, in Buddhist and various levels, we can move from the biosphere, from the geosphere, the biosphere, the neosphere, the Christosphere. So this is how it is given by Osho in that particular text, that you have moved from, the unconscious to subconscious, the human level of consciousness to superconscious. So this is where the words come, gate, gate, paragate. We are in the state of paragate. And from here to go to the level of superconsciousness. Superconsciousness is a psychological term. I should not be using that word, to a state of no mind. Parasam gate, to go altogether beyond. Bodhi swaha. Oh, what an ecstasy. So when we go to Kailash, Manasarovar, and we see all these Tibetan, particularly from the school of Nagarjuna. There are various Tibetan schools, and our Dalai Lama comes from the school of Nagarjuna. And I had a chance to learn the same mantra from Sri Dalai Lama himself. And of course, I do not know if he knows Sanskrit. Tad yatha, because that's how this, it goes like this. This very strangely, the sutra is in Sanskrit. Tad yatha. It goes like this. Tad yatha. Gate, gate, para gate, parasam gate, bodhisva. So this can be a very useful mantra for meditation also. It is called Hridayam Sutra or the Heart Sutra. And this whole level, this talk by Osho is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. His explanation of gate, gate. And of course, everything Osho has spoken is transcribed. Everything is on audio form. I have both the audio and the transcriptions. I'm happy to share with anybody who wants.
If you could, please.
I will do so. I will do so.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It was just, I got completely mesmerized. Like that, the student who entered the house and the master said, Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. I will, yeah, please go ahead.
I had a question. How do you, so what is when you reach the phase of rasa, something you said, where there is just stagnation for the longest time.
Rasaswada.
Yeah, and there is so much stagnation. And how does a person from that level get into Vyavaharika? Because Vyavaharika needs a lot of discernment, and they need to understand what is right and what is wrong and the opposite. So how do you drive or unite or
All right. Thank you very much, Pallavi.
put it together?
Fortunately for us, both this Sunday and in November, when Swami Anubhavanandaji comes, we will be going through this in detail. Also, all of us will go through from now. Each of these karikas, we will be going in detail. You know, I did not touch on the Nidityasanam portion where, if you listen to my introduction in some 2 classes earlier, I've spoken about all this. What is Laya? What is Vikshepaha? What is Kashaya? And what is Rasaswada? Of course, when we go through this, we will understand in detail. Now, supposing you are going on a particular journey from one place to another. Now, somebody is giving you a description. Now, as you are going there, you will see, you will see many forms of crossroads, too many crossroads. You don't take any of them, you go through a particular one. Now, when a person is in a rajasic mind, he will have too many distractions. So the teacher will tell you to go in a particular, so that is what is called vikshepa. The mind should go through vikshepa, avoid all those 3 distractions. Then sometimes when you are going through a monotonous stretch, the mind can go into a sleep state. So the teacher will warn you that there are certain stretches of the road where the road is so monotonous, you may go into a sleep. So be alert, don't fall asleep. That is laya. Then there is a certain stretch. What happens is where you don't seem to be progressing. You think you have attained, but it has not yet reached. So sometimes we go through a stage of spiritual stagnation. That is what is called kashaya. So all these are very beautifully described in these karikas and the obstacles to all of them. And then finally, there is another very important obstacle called rasa aswada. Now, once you get a taste of meditation, then what happens? I want it again and again. I want it more and more. Now, the experience of meditation becomes more important than living a meditative life. So these are all obstacles. And Gaudapadacharya very strongly hammers it. So, you know, it's different teachers will emphasize, but fortunately, we will be studying each of these as the obstacles to a person's spiritual growth. Remember, when we talk about Nidityasanam, what we are doing right now is Nidityasanam. Tat Chintanam, Tat Katanam, Anyon, Tat. Whatever we are doing is we are studying. So in this process, we can have Laya, we can have Vikshepaha, we can have Kashaya. That is why we have to speak to Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva, the one who can take away all the Kashaya in the form of Nilakanta. You know, whenever this negative thing comes, he takes away the kashaya or the negativeness. And then don't let the meditation or any spiritual practices should not be an obstacle. That is called rasa aswada. These are various obstacles. Nita, Pallavi.
Thank you. So how to break that rasa aswada? Because I have gotten addicted to meditation.
See, the very fact that you are aware of it.
And I thought it was a good thing to do, but now you have also negated that. So I don't know what to do anymore.
See, now that you are aware of it, that is important. See, awareness of something is the first step. The more you are aware of it, then it will help you to go on. I'm deliberately recording all these things because these things I think are still useful. So I'm keeping the recording open so those who want this record. So Pallavi, the first thing is to be aware, and then let me not be, getting into the delights, but uses as a pole vault to go beyond. Let not meditation be and not be stuck with the means, but let it be a means to a goal.
It's a
Now that's
goal
giving me a
state.
lot of peace and calmness. I will try not to make that as a goal.
Sure,
Keep
that is the
that in
teaching.
mind.
Thank you. I'll conclude the recording for now. Give me a moment.